All right, everybody, this is an explanation of plagiarism and a discussion of the ins and outs of plagiarism. So, hold on. Again, we are taking notes, so remember to write down the parts that are highlighted in yellow. You can do this on the attached Google Notes document or on your own paper according to your instructor's instructions. That doesn't make sense. All right, so previously we discussed academic honesty. And so here we're narrowing in on academic dishonesty, and specifically that is plagiarism. So if you'll remember in the discussion of copyright, you have the right to your own ideas and you have the right to control who uses that. And if anyone uses your words or ideas, then they have to give you credit for it. So plagiarism is the opposite of that concept of intellectual property. Plagiarism is where you represent other people's work as your own. So if you copy and paste something off of Wikipedia or anywhere on the internet and don't give credit to where you got it, then that is exactly what plagiarism is. So the California State University definition is using ideas, words, or the work. So notice that's ideas. It doesn't have to be something concrete. It can be something abstract like an idea. Ideas, words, and work of another person without giving them credit. And just as we discussed cheating extensively previously, cheating is one type. Plagiarism is a type of cheating, although there are other types of cheating, but we're narrowing in on plagiarism for this discussion. So there are really two types of plagiarism. That's where you deliberately do it, and that's where you accidentally do it. So for this next section, I'm going to give you a bunch of examples of the different kinds of accidental and deliberate plagiarism. I want you to write down at least two examples of each type, okay, in your notes document. So deliberate plagiarism is, I'm sure, what leaps to mind when someone says the word. You copy and paste from a website. We already mentioned that. You buy a paper from somebody else. So that's cheating, but it's also a type of plagiarism because you didn't write that paper. Or you can copy information out of books, articles, or even online. It doesn't matter if you handwrite it or not. It's still copying. It's still plagiarizing. However, there's a lot of accidental plagiarism, in just that you didn't even know you were plagiarizing because you weren't doing it right. So if you don't know how to quote a source or put a direct quote into quotation marks, if you don't know how to cite a paper, in other words, if you don't know MLA or APA or one of the other systems and use it consistently throughout your paper properly, then you're still plagiarizing, even when you didn't mean to. If you don't know how to paraphrase something and put it in your own words, you still have to cite it, but basically you're still just doing it word for word and not giving credit. So even if you're just a bad writer, you are still plagiarizing. It is your responsibility to make sure that you know how to properly cite, how to properly paraphrase, and that you are doing original work every time unless you have specific permission from your instructor to reuse an old paper. All right, now there is an exception. It's called common knowledge. If everybody knows it, you don't have to cite it. Everyone knows that George Washington was the first president. You don't have to put that as a cited source. It's just kind of everybody is accepted to know it. Temperature can be measured in Celsius or Fahrenheit, so like factual information that is easily accessible like this, you don't have to cite. Um, okay, so what happens when you don't? In real life plagiarism scandals, this is like real consequences for plagiarizing. So this young lady here was valedictorian. She had gotten into Harvard and she wrote a series of articles for her local newspaper that she plagiarized, and then they booted her out right there. So goodbye, Harvard. Then we have Jason Blair, who's this is a really well-known case, but he was a reporter for the New York Times, and he plagiarized or made up more than 40 stories in 3 years. He never even left his apartment. And he would just put up his articles, he would just make up interviews. And not only was he fired, but the two editors who were in charge of making sure that he did his work right also were fired. So they should have been fact checking what he did, but nobody ever checked. And he got away with it for a while, but he is certainly not a reporter for the New York Times anymore. And then here is another example. We have an instructor, a faculty member at Columbia University, who was accused of plagiarizing her PhD and thesis. So years later, after she plagiarized, when it was found out, she then lost her position. So it doesn't have to be you get caught right then. It can follow you and you can get punished later, right? It can come back and haunt you. Uh, so let's talk about avoiding plagiarism. Anytime you use someone else's facts, ideas, words, you must give credit to that person. You must include a citation for both quotations and paraphrases. You must have both in-text and bibliography citations. So in the body of the paper, as well as a list of citations at the end. There are different citation formats. Most often, your instructor is going to tell you which format they want you to use. MLA is what you may be most familiar with. That's English, language arts, humanities. But APA is actually the most commonly used in the most disciplines, and it's always by subject or discipline. So education is APA. So as a teacher, I use APA for education. All of the sciences, biology, chemistry, all the hard sciences, psychology, sociology, all of those are APA. And there are a few that use the Chicago style. So as a librarian, I use Chicago. Most of the fine arts fields also use Chicago. So this is the end of my discussion of plagiarism. Although um, I am going to give you some more activities to explore that more on your own after this lecture. And then the next whole unit, we'll be talking more about citation.